billions of dollars in property all over this country, and the media claims that it's for justice? Justice for who? It ain't justice for the people that are living in those neighborhoods that rely on those stores. It's sad, the lies that the media perpetrates every day. And it's sad for those that eat it up. You know, we touched upon a lot of issues, immigration, drugs, the military. I'd like to talk to you about education because, as you know, children are God's children. They're our most precious resources, children and elderly. What do you think about CRT, critical race theory, being taught to our children in minor grade schools? I don't even know how old they are, 8, 9, 10 years old or younger. What do you think about that?
I think it's part of the Marxist and communist takeover of America that they've been planning for the last 50 years. If you notice what had happened to our universities of our last two generations, it started there. It started with and you can see these liberals that graduated these liberal universities that are teachers now, that are in these educational institutions, that they are all for it because they've been indoctrinated on it. So now that we're waking up and that they have those two generations, they want to start with the younger generations because the younger you start, the more successful you'll be and the greater the impact that you'll have in destroying the nuclear family, which is part of the Marxist communist manifesto and agenda. I am totally against teaching CRT, SEL, or any of these agenda items that are being perpetrated on our young kids, including the LGBTQ transgender agenda as well. I've been on the forefront of the CRT issue in the Virginia Beach school system, starting with the CRT all the way up through the mask mandates and masking these kids and abusing these kids on a daily basis, forcing masking and some mandating that they get vaccinated by the poison. And the school boards hate to see me because family breaks the narrative of CRT and the victimization of the Virginia Beach school board or school system, because all three of my sons graduated through this so-called racist system. My oldest was only the second valedictorian, black valedictorian in the history of Virginia Beach Public Schools when he graduated high school, and he's now gone on to be a medical doctor. My middle son graduated as well as an HVAC technician. I'm a big supporter of the trade skills, and I believe that we need to bring all of the trade skills back into every high school and even down into the middle schools, not one building where they go, but inside of the schools so these kids can see it, they can smell it, they can taste it, they can touch it, so they know that they can have a skill where they can take care of themselves and take care of their families. It's said that if you teach a kid or a man 3 trades, he'll never have to worry about taking care of himself. He'll never have to worry about being on the government. He'll never have to worry about feeding himself. And so I believe that we need to definitely instill that back into these schools, into these young kids. And we really need to get out of this training. And my youngest, who graduated 5th in his class, is a musical theater performer. So we have to bring back the arts and bring back these, because the arts was taken out of the schools. And we have to have the arts back. Fortunately, he was young. He was fortunate enough to get into the Performing Arts Academy, and where he graduated from, and so he was able to do that. But this CRT and and all that. I break the narrative, and so they hate to see me, and they try not to see me and quiet me and shut me up as much as possible. But I just want to. We don't need that. That's worse than affirmative action to me, because you're breathing and you're teaching, and you're teaching kids that because you are black or because you are a minority, you cannot learn the same, and you cannot be as great as a white or Asian student because it's their fault, or because of where you come from, because of who your mom is or who your dad is, or how much money they make, what you have at home. This victimization has to stop of these kids. And then the white kids are being made to believe that it's their fault that the black kids are where they are. And it's not. It's the fault of the parents. It's the fault of these adults. It's the fault of these systems. And I'm not talking about systemic racism. I'm talking about the system of these parents and these victimization pimps that's pushing this stuff in our schools.
Amen. Amen. When we come into this world, we come in this world by God bare ass. We leave this world bare ass. I always say, I'm not a victim. I'm a Republican. My father never raised me to be a victim. He raised me. You can become anything you want to become. I don't blame anyone for my success and failures in my life but myself. There is no more self-accountability. And when you talk about how the government is trying to infiltrate, I was reading a book from 1989 about the New World Order, and we see everything taking shape where now the government wants to be the daddy of parents. And they talk about that in this book in 1989, where the state will become the father of children. You talked about the breakup of family. We could also mention homosexual marriages. This all goes against the paradigm of what this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values. And we have to get back to a moral and just society. If not, we're going to end up like Sodom and Gomorrah. And, I asked myself, where are all of these religious leaders standing up, pushing back against this immoral narrative? Where are the Christian leadership? Where's the Jewish leadership? Where's the Muslim leadership? Where are all of these religious leadership pushing back against this immoral act on humanity? I wish somebody could answer me. And I'm not looking for an answer from you per se. But they're collecting all of this money from the parishioners, from the government, and maybe that's why they're not being involved. Because it may affect the flow of their economics. It may affect their way of life. But God says, I will not be mocked. Every man will reap what he sows. And I'm a witness. I have a testimony. You cannot fool God. You may think that you can, but you can't. And I'm not going to get into a testimony of myself tonight, but I'm going to share something with you like my son shared to me, and I'll keep it simple. My son was 22 years old at the time, and whether you believe in God or not, my son put it to me in this perspective. He says, Dad, you have universal law and natural law. We operate as humans within the framework of that natural law and universal law. Now, my son says to me, now we have to be careful how we operate within that framework, because the universal law can push back against your will with the greater power and force. That was extremely insightful to me, because we are energy beings. We're beings made of frequencies. And if we cannot understand who we are, how do we know where we're going? And when we briefly spoke about communism and Marxism, we're being led by people who do not want us to no longer be humane and living in a just society. And we must do whatever we can to push and fight back. Let's talk about one other issue, and then we'll probably be out of time. And just to wrap up a few things, we know you're against CRT. We know you're against mandates. We know what your position is with the military. We heard you talk briefly about the immigration crisis. Also, I believe that you believe in term limits as well. Am I correct? I think I saw somewhere where you signed a pledge for term limits. I'm not sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we touched about education. We touched about health. We touched about immigration. We touched upon drugs. Are there any other policy initiatives that you have thought about that you'd like to bring to Congress to help America in general? Are there any things that you might have thought about that when you get there you want to introduce this legislation or whatever to change the dynamics or the face of what is transpiring?
Well, I honestly think we need to get back to President Trump's energy policy. You know, a little over a year ago, we were energy independent to where we were the number one oil producer and exporter in the world. And people may not know that, but we were the number one producer in the world. Now, fast forward, we have this administration that closed down pipelines, that holding up more than 4,600 applications to drill and to open up our energy sectors. They're holding them up. They stopped drilling in Anwar and Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, where we have more oil than Saudi Arabia. So I'm definitely going to push to get back to those energy policies. We need to lift all restrictions and bans on coal production, the production of oil, liquid natural gas, shale, and we need to open up all the pipelines on all federally leased land. And that's the thing, too. The government owns too much federal land. This land needs to be given back to the states where it belongs. The federal government has too much land held for hostage. I believe we need to stop the false science of this climate change agenda. And President Trump actually said it very, very well when he spoke about John Kerry at his rally in Georgia when, you know, he said John Kerry talked about, you know, the water rising, whatever it was, over the next 300 fucking years, you know. And it was classic, you know. They said 1/10 of 1 inch in the next 300 fucking years is a joke. We're like, oh man, see, and that's what we need, because it is false science, you know. And I believe we need to have research in hydropower, and have a new generation of nuclear power, you know, and keep going forward with our clean water initiatives, because we need clean and fresh water. We need to stop the EPA, a clean power plan, because it includes these eyesore and what I consider very bird deadly wind turbines that actually need oil functional, and if the power grid ever shuts down, they're not functional. So there goes our power, and we need to be exporters of oil and liquid natural gas again. You know, we need to remove all of these cumbersome regulations that hold these energy producers hostage and that drive up energy costs for consumers. And we need to encourage all forms of energy development and the responsible harvesting of our national resources, not just killing our ecosystem, you know, and killing our nature. And we need to incentivize appropriate environmental stewardship that's balanced with economic needs provided by sufficient affordable energy. and that's primarily oil and drilling. And we definitely need, I think, to fight the influence